Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Young Living. The theme verse for this series is 1 Timothy 4:12, which says, "Don't let anybody think less of you because you are young, but be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity." This week, we are going to be focusing on our faith. Obviously, the previous weeks were focused on our words, the way we live, and our love. So this week we're focusing on faith, and I love this topic just because it's so broad and you can look at it from so many different angles. And typically when talking about faith, we instantly go to Job, and we start, kind of going through his life and seeing the crazy faith that he had in God, to the point where Satan was taking everything from him, took his family, everything. And yet through all of that, remained faithful. And it's an incredibly strong story and example that we can apply into our lives of faith. But we're going to kind of go a different route this week, and we're going to go through a little bit of the book of Daniel and talk about a few different examples in this book. And I personally love this book. I've been studying it for a while, and it's just super cool and packed full of so much information and that we can apply to our everyday life. So I first encourage you to just study out the book of Daniel because it is phenomenal. But we are going to get started here in chapter 3 of Daniel. But before we do that, I want to talk about one of my favorite TV shows. And this is a TV show that the Condon household watched like every day of our life growing up. It was when we were in the van, when we were at home, it was always, can we put a, VCR in, or a cassette tape of it or whatever it was. We were like, we wanted to watch this show, and that show is VeggieTales. And VeggieTales has a very interesting way of, going about teaching Bible lessons through fruits and vegetables. Sounds pretty crazy, but I'm telling you, your life will never be complete without watching a VeggieTales episode. And one of my favorite episodes on VeggieTales was something that we're going to actually talk about right now. And it actually goes through Daniel chapter 3 and talks about some of the guys we're going to be discussing here. So Daniel 3 goes into the lives of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego a little bit, and well, not a little bit, a whole lot. And so it shows us, kind of the true character and the amount of faith they have, and it's super cool and encouraging. So just to give a quick rundown, for time's sake, I'm not going to go through the whole story. So you're going to want to go through and read that because there's so many good, valuable details that we're not going to be able to get to today. For sake of time, but when you're going through the book of, or when you're going through chapter 3 and reading about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to summarize everything, King Nebuchadnezzar creates this, big golden statue of himself. May have been a little conceited, but creates this big golden statue of himself and basically tells everyone, hey, you have to worship me. At this time every day, everyone's going to come out, they're going to bow down to this golden statue, and they're going to worship me. Now, that doesn't really fly very well with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because, obviously, they're serving God, and you don't do that and cheat on him with a golden statue. It is not part of what we do or what they did. And so they, every time it come to that day, everyone would bow down. They were basically like, yeah, no, we're going to stand up and we are going to, let you know we do not agree with this and we are not going to worship your statue. And obviously King Nebuchadnezzar was not very happy with this, and he, kind of brings them into the principal's office and tells them, hey, you're breaking the rules. You're going to go to detention if you do not follow the rules and bow down and worship me. And, long story short, they tell him, no, not going to worship you. He goes, all right, you're going to detention. Detention's very hot, and it is a fiery furnace. And You do not come out of detention. Therefore, it is not a place you want to go to. So King Nebuchadnezzar tells his guards, hey, we're going to throw them into the fiery furnace. But before we do that, we're going to make sure there's no chance that they are coming back from this. And we're going to heat this 7 times hotter than we normally do for anybody else or for anything else. Hopefully, I don't know what they were doing with that fiery furnace all the time. But in this situation, they're throwing people into it. But anyway, so they heat this furnace 7 times hotter, okay? And they have the guards escort, the 3 gentlemen into the fiery furnace. Before they get to the fiery furnace, it was so hot that literally the guards escorting the boys died because of how hot it is. Just being close to it, okay? That's like pretty crazy hot. That's something I do not ever want to experience. I don't even like summertime. It's so hot. So I can't even imagine going into a fiery furnace that is 7 times hotter than it is supposed to be, because fire is hot, period. So crazy. So anyways, they throw the guys into the fiery furnace, and there must have been a window, or I don't have the floor plans to it, so I don't know for sure. But there was either a window or an opening of some sort that you could see into it. Okay, and so they look into the furnace, watching them burn. It's kind of gruesome, but they look into this furnace, and they're a little confused because they put 3 guys in there. Now there's 4 guys in there, and so it's just like doesn't make sense at all. Okay, so they're also not burning; they're just like chilling. Just if I looked into a furnace and I saw 4 guys standing up, just chilling there, I'd probably be like really freaked out, and I probably wouldn't do what King Nebuchadnezzar does next. And he says, "Come out, come out of the fire. I want to, how is this even possible?" The guys walk out of the fire, still hair, still eyebrows, no problem, no burn, no singe, nothing. And so because of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's faith, their lives were completely saved from the fire. And that is just completely crazy. When you think that faith is literally powerful enough to truly save your life from a not life or death situation, but just a pure death situation. Like you're dying when you go into a fiery furnace. And yet, because of their faith, God saved their lives. And that's awesome. But what I think is incredibly cool, like although your life being saved is sweet and all, but what just blows my mind and what is phenomenal about this story is that it didn't just affect Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but because of their faith that their life was spared, now King Nebuchadnezzar looks at that and says, holy cow, that changes me, and then King Nebuchadnezzar starts worshiping God. And so because of their faith, it affected the people around them. It affected the king. It affected the guards. It was a phenomenal thing, because they were an example through faith that changed the people around them. Okay, and so that's stuff that we can apply to our lives. That's when we're at school and craziness happens, or we're at work and just everything just goes nuts. We can remain faithful to God and keep our faith in God and trust in God, knowing you got this. There's no issues. I know whatever it is, it doesn't make sense to me, but you got this. Does not just get you through it, which is amazing in itself, but it affects the people around you, your coworkers, your schoolmates around you. They're going to see like, dude, he's not even worried. And then when you come out of it, they're going to be like, dude, God had his back that whole time. God had her back that whole time. It's going to affect the people around you. And if you go further into Daniel, there's another example where, now King Nebuchadnezzar's out of the picture, and King Darius steps in and is now controlling the kingdom, and he decides he's going to split the kingdom up into several different areas, and he's going to put Daniel over one of those areas. Okay, well, there were other dudes that wanted that spot and wanted Daniel's life and was jealous of him and just had so many things against Daniel for some reason. And Daniel was, crazy, crazy faithful, and just had such a crazy amount of faith and such an amazing relationship with God. He just prayed like basically all day long. He would eat and then he'd pray again. Then he'd pray and then he'd eat and then he'd eat and he'd pray again, because he just like that's all he did. He'd eat, sleep, repeat, prayer. Okay, and so he, long story short, the guys get jealous. They go to King Darius and basically try to talk real smooth. And it's like, hey man, what if you had the whole kingdom, completely worship you for several days, and they weren't allowed to worship anybody else? That'd be awesome, right? And trying to build the king's self-esteem up and, kind of like butter him up and be like, hey, if you do this, people are going to worship you for several days and no one else, so the king's, okay, fine, let's do it. And so obviously, that doesn't fly with Daniel. Daniel's like, well, I'm going to, pray and I'm going to worship God anyways, because I'm completely, wholeheartedly committed to Jesus. And so he, Daniel at this point now is praying against the law to God, and his buddies are like, ching, knew that was going to happen. That's why we did this. Let's go to the King Darius and let him know, because in the when making that law where no one else was allowed to worship him, he basically said, if you fail at this and you worship something else other than me, you'll be thrown into a den full of lions. You die. And so they find Daniel praying, and they're like, sweet, we can go tell King Darius, because Daniel prayed, broke the law, now he's going to die, we can take over where he's at, we get all of his stuff, blah blah blah, we get to move into his room. Okay, so they tell King Darius. Darius throws him into the lion's den, and against Darius's will, he liked Daniel. He didn't want that to happen. He was friends with Daniel, but because of the law, he had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. Felt terrible, and of course, goes overnight. King Darius runs up the next morning to check on Daniel, see if he survived. Looks in, Daniel's just chilling with the cats. No issue. Okay. And so they pulled Daniel out of the lion's den, and kind of same situation as before. They look him over, he's perfectly fine, no scratches, nothing. And King Darius at that point looks at him, and same thing as King Nebuchadnezzar. His life's changed. He starts worshiping God, but it doesn't stop there this time. Okay, it didn't just stop with the people around him. Daniel, because of his faith, changed the life of King Darius. And because of that, King Darius issued that the entire nation is to serve God and God only now. So because of Daniel's faith, it did not just affect the people around him, but it affected the people around those people, and the people around those people, and the people around those people, and to the point where Daniel's faith affected an entire kingdom. Okay? And though that is such a powerful message, and it's phenomenal to think that because of your faith, because you prayed, because things got rough and you were like, God's going to take care of it anyways. You had a surprise test come up you didn't know about, and I'm not worried about it, God's going to take care of it. Or you get fired from your job, I'm not worried about it, God's going to take care of it. And the next thing you know, you have an amazing job, you got an A+ on the test. All this craziness, crazy amazing stuff happens, and it's now to the point where the people around you are looking like, dude, he wasn't worried, God took care of him, man, like that's awesome. And then it starts affecting their friends, and then their friends get affected by it, and their friends, and it just goes on like a domino effect because of your faith. And that is just, to me, phenomenal. And if you keep reading through the book of Daniel, you'll find so many different examples of this, and it truly is just an awesome thing. So I want us to take some time and discuss some different questions about how we can apply these situations into our life.